Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy. Today we're in Deuteronomy chapter 5. We're going to look at verse 15. We're still looking at the fourth commandment. To remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Now today I want you to notice the reason given for the fourth commandment, and I want to compare it to the giving of the Ten Commandments in Exodus chapter 20. For this is the one part of the Ten Commandments where there's a slight variation between the giving at Mount Sinai in Exodus 20 and the giving on the east bank of the Jordan River in Deuteronomy chapter 5. Now the commandment's the same, but the reason is slightly varied, and that's interesting. So in Deuteronomy 5, verse 15, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, and notice the reason why. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. When you observe the Sabbath, you remember God's mighty acts of redemption in the Exodus, how he delivered you from slavery and brought you out as a free people. All right, keep that in mind. Now let's turn back to Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. Again, this is the command to remember the Sabbath day, but notice the reason given here. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So in Exodus, the rationale is given because it's built into the order of creation. When God created the world, as we read in Genesis 1 and 2, he created the world in 6 days. And on the 7th day, he rested and blessed the Sabbath day. So we've got 2 reasons for observing the Sabbath. It's built into the order of creation, and it reminds us of God's great acts of redemption and deliverance when he brought us out of slavery in Egypt. Now the command is the same, but there are 2 motives behind keeping the Sabbath day. And it's the same for us today. When we observe the Sabbath day, which for we Christians, that's the Lord's Day. When we observe the Lord's Day as a sacred day, a special day, we do it first because it's built into creation itself. It is a part of the created order, a day of rest, a day of renewal, a day of refreshment. God has told us that if you try to work every day, you'll simply wear yourselves out. So I've built into the very fabric of creation that day to rest, refresh, and renew. But also, it is a day to remember that God has saved us. It is to remember that he has delivered us. As he delivered the Egyptians from bondage in Egypt, he has delivered us from bondage to sin. We remember we are a saved, redeemed people. And by observing the Lord's Day, remember that Jesus, by his death and resurrection, has saved us and redeemed us and set us free. That's why the Lord's Day really has 2 aspects for us. It is a day of rest, a day of renewal, but it's also a day of worship. It's a day that we come and worship because God has saved us. So it's very important that we build into the fabric of our life, the routine of our life, the observance of Sabbath on the Lord's Day. We need that day to rest and renew, but we also need that day to worship and to praise the Lord who has saved us. We need to be reminded that we are a saved, redeemed people. By the death and resurrection of Christ, he has set us free. That is our Exodus, as we've experienced it through faith in Jesus. And we worship on the Lord's Day, as we also rest and renew. They both come together in our keeping of the Lord's Day. So we need to be a people who remember the importance of Sabbath keeping, observing the Lord's Day, that we might rest and be renewed, but also that we might worship the Lord who has saved us. So the fourth commandment is still so relevant for us today, to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. You have a great day today, and I hope you'll join us next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy.